we've got here is failure to communicate.
Yep. All right. So I have a few things I want to talk about today. I told you one of the main reasons I wanted to do this just because, like always, just certain things pissing me off.
Which did get my curiosity up, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I was just like, it had to do with a lot of different things. But really it just came down to, like we always talked about from the beginning, like no one really wanted to have a conversation. Like, you say one thing, if it's not 100% agreed by them, then all of a sudden you're like the enemy.
Right.
And it's just like, no, like that's not what I was saying. I even talked about this with I don't talk obviously politics with, any younger kids or a couple of my workers who are teenagers, but we were talking about social media.
Yeah.
And one of the younger kids brought up, it's not a good way to socialize.
No,
And I was
toxic.
like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, you can't understand anyone. Like, everything is written. So there's no, it's not like having a conversation with someone straight out.
Right. Yeah. You don't get like tone, you don't get inflection, you don't get nuance.
Yeah.
Just always just flat words.
Yeah.
And if you come at it with a mind of this person's an ass, you're going to come out with what they said is bad. So.
Yeah. So I guess the first and most important topic, do you think Will Smith should have slapped him?
God, no. God, no.
As soon as that happened, like, I wasn't watching the Oscars, but of course I saw something on Google like right away.
Yep.
And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is going to become a political thing.
Yeah.
People are going to, and I saw it right away on like Fox News clips, like, the left is taking Will Smith's side. They believe in violence.
In violence. Right.
Like, Jesus, can we just have a thing that's not political?
Right. Right.
But yeah, that whole thing, I was just like, which made me think, we had the whole thing on, we talked about white privilege and I believe in it, but who has the most privilege in the world? Rich, famous people.
Oh.
Because if that was me or you, we'd be in handcuffs.
Probably before we slapped him. We would have been tackled and arrested before it even happened.
Exactly.
But we're just two commoners,
But yeah, everyone talks about it. I mean, every single time I go to Yahoo to go into my email, I see the headline. I'm like, man, like,
I don't understand why it's a big deal. Like,
it's a
the
big
way
deal,
it became a big deal.
Yeah.
Like it was a big deal. But
yeah, it's a big deal, but at the same time, it's like, well, there's other more important stuff that should probably be front page.
Right. Right. This is something that, yes, you can kind of dig into it and deal with that. But like you said, it explodes into this political thing now that just pushes us further apart when none of it is true.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this again? So
one thing that I saw when I said it was making me mad was, I always talk about how politics is really like, it's just made people so one-sided on everything. Like, everything has to be like, oh, you said something about this person that was positive, I hate you. And I follow this guy on Instagram, and he won the Congressional Medal of Honor. His name is I forget his name right now.
Is he a politician?
No. He's he won the Congressional Medal of Honor. He's the youngest recipient ever to win the Congressional Medal of Honor. And I have him on Instagram, so I forget his first name. His handle is Chicks Dig Scars.
Okay.
Kyle Carpenter.
Okay.
And I've followed him ever since I heard his story. He was in Afghanistan in 2010, and he won the Congressional Medal of Honor, youngest person ever. He threw himself on a grenade.
Jesus.
To save the other guy who was with him in the bunker, or they were on a roof. 3 years he was in the hospital. He had surgeries. His whole face is reconstructed down here, lost an eye. Anyway, a war hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he never gets political, which is another thing I like about him. Like, he just posts stuff about his life. But every once in a while he'll, I don't know, I can't even tell you if he's more Democrat or more Republican, because he doesn't talk. I did read somewhere once that he was backing Jeb Bush in 2016, but I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, recently, one of his recent pictures, he was at the Congressional Medal of Honor museum they're making.
Okay.
And Clinton, George W., and Obama donated money. So in the post, it shows him shaking the hand of George Bush. And he says, "Oh, thank you, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, for donating money to this museum.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much." Just basic. And oh man, people were like, "What about your President Trump? How dare you? I'm unfollowing you. You're a traitor." Jeez. I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, and people who actually thought stuff through pointed out, one, Trump didn't give money, but also apparently, yeah. And, I personally don't think he probably would have anyway, but regardless, he, if you're a president that's running right now or can run again, you can't give money because they don't want it to be political.
Right.
So
Makes sense.
Yeah. So really, again, they're arguing about nothing. It's not even something that should be on the table.
Yep.
And other people are pointing out, he's not saying he agrees with who he agrees with political. He's just saying, thank you for donating money to this cause.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Just like you could thank 100 other people for doing the same thing.
Yeah. And mostly I don't go down that rabbit hole when I see it, but I did this time. And
because you respect the guy.
Yeah, exactly. I respect the guy, but also I'm like, and then some of them were just trolls, the ones that don't even show their picture. But there was a decent amount of them who were just regular people. And I'm like, that's when it scares me.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have people you're going to have crazies anywhere. And you're going to have people who just do stuff on the internet because they're bored. But when real people start getting that kind of mindset, that's what scares me.
Game over.
Mm-hmm.
And two things to that. First one is, I would, well, I don't know how you stand on that in a wider sense, but I see that coming from, and I kind of write the narrative that people who support Trump are now acting like they're in a cult and they can't see reality for what it is. And I know you say, it happens on both sides.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening in the, for instance, watching political TikTok, which I shouldn't, but it's a, what do they call it?
Guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
And this one girl who's very, very popular was like, "Where are your Build Back Better? Where are your Joe Biden hats?" And it's just like, this is what it is now.
Yeah. Well,
all it is showing your allegiance, and it ain't about anything anymore.
Yeah. Well, yes, I actually just had this conversation with someone the other day. And I personally do believe that I don't even want to use the word cult-like, because I in my opinion on the left, it's less cult-like and more just like, okay, we're following the narrative, whether we agree with it or not. But sometimes it's just the idea, man, I hate that side so much that I'm just going to stick with this.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I don't agree with what they said that one time, I'm just going to pretend I do.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, when it comes to the flags, I've had people say that to me, oh, well, what makes you think the election wasn't rigged? You see Trump flags everywhere. You never see Biden flags. I'm like, he's not worshipped. no politician should be worshipped like that, in my
Right.
opinion.
Right.
Like when you're, I mean, I go to the point where like, I don't think anyone's bad for doing it. But when I see people wearing like, you know, having Brady posters unless they're little kids,
Right. Right.
wearing Brady's thing, having like, okay, like, but again, you think differently of me or differently than me.
Yeah.
But a political person, like having it where it's just like, no, we're standing behind you no matter what.
Right.
It's scary. And I hate using the whole Nazi thing, but everyone points out, like, you know, they started getting the flag and the swastika, and it's
People rally behind it, and people start forgetting what they're thinking and start buying the narrative. And
yep. Well, when I went to Florida to meet your parents, I visited a guy who I went through boot camp with. Hadn't seen him since boot camp. It was really cool to catch up with him. And of course, he's from Georgia. Like, you know, I don't think he's super political on a lot of stuff, but we mentioned something about a little bit about politics. And I said, yeah, you know, in East Haddam, where I live, like there's Trump flags everywhere. And he's like, really? He's like, you're in the Northeast. And I said,
Right.
yeah. He's like, he literally thought, and I get it. He's like, I thought everyone from Virginia up was all Democrats.
Right.
And I'm like, no,
That's not it at all. Not it at all.
Even if you go, but you know, we think, and another thing, I said this to Lisa when we went to all the different places. It was still when COVID had some decent regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was saying, oh, Florida's relaxed. There was more businesses that said you have to wear masks here than in Connecticut that I saw.
Yeah.
Because
cool.
And we were we went to the Titanic Museum. It was one of the first things we did. And we didn't wear our masks because on the way down there, at least had all the masks. I was like, it's Florida. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And halfway through, she's like, we're the only ones in here without masks on. And I was like, oh, and then we put them on because I was like, I don't want to be the only person without it.
Right. But you forget that Florida was a 6-point win for Trump. It wasn't a blowout.
Yeah.
It was 46% of the people voted the other way. And you forget that.
And what it really opened my eyes to was that we hear stuff about on the news. This is the way it is here. This is the way it is there. But unless you really go there, you don't really know.
Right. They simplify it.
Yeah. People from other countries, when they think of America, they think LA and New York.
Right.
It's like, that's not what America is.
Right. Yeah.
I always said that to Lisa. I was like, if I ever go to another country, I don't want to go to the city of that country. I want to go to the Colchester or East Haddam of China or Australia or wherever, to see what it's really like, not just what you see on TV.
Right. The second thing I was going to say to you that I think you'll find kind of funny is I was at a friend's house, and we politically don't agree. And so we had made kind of a pact not to be political, but it always turns that way no matter what. And the fight revolved around, and luckily his kid was there, because him and his wife were having the disagreement. And I'm like, I'm trying to explain this to you. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And they were fighting with me, and he kept saying, he's trying to agree with you and you won't let him, because of the divide that, they just pigeonholed me into a category. And I'm like, I'm agree. And I had to say it 12 times. It's like they were still yelling at me. And I'm like, finally, I'm like, I just can't. I don't even know what to do. There's just nothing else I can say.
I had that same thing happen on many things, but one I can think of is gun control or guns. I actually just got my pistol permit a week and a half ago, finally. And I put something on Facebook because I was saying, like, it's not as easy as people make it out. And it's not. I mean, you have to go through the loopholes. I don't know what it is in other states.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, years ago, on Facebook. It was having a conversation with a guy I knew from a long time ago, and you know, through martial arts training, and we didn't really talk, but I said, oh no, you know, I'm for people owning guns, but I wouldn't be against trying to find ways and things that you have to do to keep it out of the hands of people who shouldn't have.
Right.
Whether that's training more consistently, you know, re-upping and having to do the course every couple of years, or whatever it is. It would all have to be the law, but or whatever law they proposed. But he right away, he's like, you're anti-gun. And I'm like, what are you talking about, anti-gun? I have guns.
Right. That doesn't make any sense.
You're saying I'm anti-gun. I literally go to the point where if you pass it, I don't care if you have a fully automatic gun. Like, it's just the, hey, what can we do if people are showing signs? But right away, it was just, I'm saying something, oh, maybe we can do this. But yeah, I totally agree with people's right to have guns. You're anti-gun because you don't just say everyone should be strapped at all times,
Right.
And you should
everybody should be walking around with a rocket launcher.
Yeah. But
Isn't
yeah,
it funny? Like, I'm trying to agree with you. You won't even let me agree with you.
Yeah.
Like, that was pretty eye-opening for me. It was like, I didn't realize that I can't even agree with someone anymore.
Yeah.
Because of the way he sees.
That's another thing that got me really pissed off. But before I say that one, I'm going to tell you a story of when I was going to get my final license for the gun. Because the guy behind me started talking to me, and it seemed like a nice guy, but right away I was like, great. Really, like, started like, oh yeah, this blah blah blah. Started talking about how COVID was fake. You know, anyone who got the vaccine is going to get a heart attack. I'm like, shit. Like, okay, how long is this going to take?
Yeah. Yep.
But he was from another country. He was from, man, I forget. It was some European country.
Yeah.
And it was a socialist country. And he was like, this country is socialism. I came from a socialist country. Everyone wants to leave. And again, just the way he was talking, I wasn't taking anything seriously. But I will say, whenever I talk to people who are immigrants, they're like going to the right more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just one of those things, like, you know, again, everything has gotten lost. Everyone just thinks if you're for any left-leaning policies, you must be 100% against freedom, against all that stuff. It's like, man, that's not
whatever the heck that means. I'm still trying to figure out what that even means.
Yeah.
It's such a general statement of something that doesn't even.
Yeah. Or even right-leaning stuff. Like, you know, I hear people say sometimes, oh, right-wingers, they're all religious. Like, I know plenty of right-wingers who I've never asked them, but I would guess they're probably atheists. And
yeah. Or just like, you know, non-denominational, or, you know, casual Christians or casual Muslims or casual Jews.
Yeah.
They're not fundamentalist, right?
So the other thing that got me going, and it got me going more because it was a little bit on a personal level, like not too much, but because I knew the person decently, and also the way that they just like kind of put me down. So obviously a lot of people have been talking about the swimmer, the transgender swimmer.
Yep.
And we talked about this a little bit, I think, when I was going over like the idea that someone who's born biologically male and then transitions to female and then wants to compete, I have a problem with that unless doctors prove, okay, you know, once you're on hormone therapy for this long and you have this amount of testosterone in your body and your body's changed. And I mean, I'm not against it for like the reason like, oh, well, I just don't want him competing. It's, well, is this fair to everybody? Which is the same reason, hey, in guys sports, well, you're not allowed to take testosterone because it gives you an advantage. So not that I disagree with it. It's just, I think that there hasn't been enough study about when's the perfect time to make that transition and let people start competing. So of course, someone who I know posted something, and it tends to be all positive, like, oh, the feelings kind of thing, which I get, because I think people who do this are nice people, and their main goal is, I want people to be able to do what they want and not feel like they can't. But anyway, so I wrote, like, if the majority of doctors after this long say it, I would be for it. But I do question, hey, does this person have an advantage now? And I went as far to say, I do think that people who just say, hey, let everyone compete where they want to compete, they're not doing it because they're bad people. They're doing it because they're good people. They're doing it because they want people to, they don't want to discriminate against anyone and make people feel like they don't belong. But I also feel, well, if you have a physical advantage over the other however many people that are competing in your division, then, well, I also have to worry about their feelings too. But anyway, right away, someone who I know, I mean, when I say known, like, grew up with my family, right? Their dad knew my dad and grew up with my dad. And so right away was, I have to tell my kid, their kid was transgender, that there's people like you in the world who will keep them from doing things they love. You're a teacher and a mentor. Do your students know what kind of person you are? Like,
when you said that wasn't much of a
just
personal attack, that was a big time personal attack.
Yeah. And I was like, look, I really don't want to talk to you if you're going to talk. Like, this is really rude. Like, I don't want to talk to you at all if this is what you're going to do. Now, the more I thought about it, again, maybe the person was angry because they have a child who's transgender and they were feeling attacked a little bit. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I never said anything like, oh, like, you hear a lot of people say, like, oh, the hell with these people. They're just a guy in a woman's body, and or vice versa, a woman in a guy's body. Like, I want it to be fair for everybody. But yeah, just like that, it's like, man, like, can we even have a conversation about this? Or is it just agree with me? And if you don't, then screw you.
Yeah. I'll bring back to my point. I was trying to agree with my friend and he wouldn't even let me agree with him. And it just gotten to the point where it just drives me crazy, because it's like, we can't have a nuanced, complex, interesting conversation and debate without pigeonholing everybody into the corner and making them out to be a, crazy right-wing radical nut job, or a commie, pinko, transgender loving leftist. It just is, I don't understand. And personally, I would blame it on 2016 and after became a really big element of pulling this apart. And I know people blame Obama and all that, and I struggle with that concept. And then nobody will bring up anything to dive deeper. They just say it. Yeah. And then, but I'm like, there was we could still have conversations with each other, right?
Yeah. Well,
I believe that George Bush wasn't a good guy. Like, ultimately, my opinion was, we were going over and killing a lot of Iraqi and Afghani citizens, and that ain't so hot. But at the same time, I could still understand people saying, hey, we were attacked on 9/11. Afghanistan was a place that was harboring terrorism. And I'm like, I get that. And we could both walk away and not be, you're just a, crazy nut job and I'm a crazy nut job and you can't speak. It's really strange how this has happened. It feels like it happened kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's so. This is. I think you have a lot of great points, and who knows? I mean, who knows exactly when it started? Right. I know we've talked before about the fairness doctrine that they took away in 1987.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's when I think news organizations started. Well, now we don't have to be It's just,
Yep.
and slowly and slowly it started building to where, I mean, go back to like the Daily shows in 2004 and 2003, like they busted on each other,
Right.
but it was never like this. And it kept getting worse. So I honestly think an Obama, a Bush, like I honestly think we were headed to where we're at regardless. I do think Trump helped get us there way faster.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like, well, is that it's obviously it's bad, but can we try and fix it that much faster so it doesn't get worse?
Right.
Because
Right.
yeah, like it's, I mean, even in 2014, you could have a conversation with someone who was on a different political party and not, I mean, people are literally losing family members, losing good
Right.
friends. Like it's, which ultimately is the scariest thing, which we'll get to at the end. But that's where that's my biggest fear out of all of this.
Yeah, I
And
saw
I
a
do,
statistic now that said that 40% of Republicans polled said it might be time for violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
40%.
And
that's crazy to me.
I would go as far as whether it's conservative or liberals, you said 40%, I would add 30% onto that. Well, actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I think that the majority on both sides still don't want that, but they feel like because social media and the news always takes the 10% who just want that. I don't feel like normal people feel like they have a voice. They don't feel like most people are like them.
Right.
Because they think of Twitter and they think of Facebook and they think of the news, and they're like, man,
Yep.
everyone else is thinking this. Like, am I wrong for, being friends with this person? They're telling me how evil they are.
Right. Right.
And that's why, like, oh man, I've always said I want someone who can just step up and stop all this craziness. But there's not even a person on the horizon.
I don't know how you put the genie back in the bottle, because I would contend that you got the most milquetoast, bland, nondescript human being as president, and people see him as a divider.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well,
what the hell has he done?
Yeah.
He hasn't even done anything.
Here's the thing about Biden too. Like, again, I didn't vote for him, but he, especially him, like everyone picks, but I heard people say the same thing about Trump. Like, you'd say one thing, but then you say this thing, which contradicts what you said before. So people are saying Biden is evil, but he's also a puppet. So if he's not the one in control, how is he the one who's
right?
Everyone's, and I've said this for a while. Like, I don't care if you have Trump in there, Biden in here. It's just party versus party. That's all it really is.
Yeah.
Like, until someone goes against their own party and gains people from the other party, this is going to a very bad place.
Yeah. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that.
A girl I talked to who was a martial arts student, but we became friends with the family and stuff like that. And we've talked politics a lot. I actually invited her to come tonight, but she was busy. And I said this to her all the time. This was back in 2018. I was like, we've went past that point of no return. There's no going back now. Like, I want it to, but we've already reached to where, like, it's gone too far.
Yeah.
And which ultimately scares the hell out of me. And did you ever watch Bill Maher's? I don't watch his whole shows. I just watch like clips.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a couple things talking about the 2024 election. And if it doesn't go bad before then, nobody's going to believe what happens. If the left wins, or if, the Democrats win.
Yep.
Violence.
Rigged election.
Yep.
Rigged election.
If the opposite way, if Trump wins again, it's going to be violence. Like, I don't see it, and not from regular Democrats or Republicans, the extremists. Either side, the extremists, and then again, the people on that side are going to feel like they have to go because they'll feel like, oh, I'm the only one who thinks that this shouldn't be happening. It's like, no, most people don't think this should be happening.
Right.
Bill Maher says it all the time. I think I've told you about my feelings on Bill Maher. I agree with him on like 90% of the stuff. I also think he seems like a jerk. He seems like a snob, but I agree with him on almost everything. But he says it all the time. He's like, Twitter is not the world. It's not a real place. Like, don't think that is what most people think, just because that's the only thing you read when you go online. Right.
Well, that's the same thing, you know, that you mentioned about everybody has a Trump flag. So how did Trump lose? Like, that's not the world.
Yeah.
That's your neighborhood. That's your, you know, little nook of the world. It's not the world. Yeah. It's the same thing. It's like people start to, you know, believe the hype, and it's yikes.
And that's why I hope that we get, I hope there's a Republican who takes over, only because, again, I personally don't really care who wins, because I think we're leading to the same place, if it's Trump or if it's any Democrat. But I don't know. I don't see any other. I think even the politicians have gotten the idea, like, I have to appease the crazies to get the vote. Which, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I said the same thing about, like, with the left. Like, does it matter if it's Biden or it's this person or it's that person? Like, anyone who's Democrat, as long as it's not Trump, you know?
Yep.
And even on the right, I mean, no one's going to be like, oh, well, it's, I don't know. Who's another Republican who might possibly run? Who's
Tucker?
Who?
Ron DeSantis, Tucker Carlson, Ron DeSantis.
That guy's whatever. That guy's I hate that guy.
Yeah, I know, but his polling numbers aren't bad.
Yeah, but again, he's a divider, whatever. All right, let's use Ron DeSantis. I don't know too much about him. I know a lot of people hate him, but all right, that's fine. He's not Trump. Like, he's not just gonna, you know, maybe, because then again, most people who run for politicians want to be popular. So they start talking the shit.
Yep.
And then everyone's chanting for him and they feel good.
Yep.
The president of the United States should be kind of liked by the majority of people. I want a president who people are like, nah, all right.
Yep. Do your job.
Yeah, he's doing his job. He's not.
I don't agree with everything, but I agree with some things that he's doing. And
if I ran for president, I wouldn't have a Twitter or a Facebook.
No, absolutely not.
Like,
but these days, how do you get your message out there without it? I don't know. Because kids don't watch TV anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
commercials are
true.
You know, I just don't know how you would do that. But
or
I
understand
your larger point.
Yeah, and just post it on the main stuff. Like, actually, kind of to go off the subject, when I was talking with the kid who works for me, who's a teenager, and the one who was saying about social media, I was telling him how I was watching an ESPN documentary recently about Michael Jordan. And they were talking about how Michael Jordan back then was like, you know, like these celebrities back in the 90s and 80s, like, they seemed larger than life.
Right.
Like, everyone was like, and you don't see that as much nowadays.
Right.
Why? Because now everyone knows everything about your life, so you don't seem like
this mystical figure.
Yeah. Like, you're that word larger than life superstar, like, you don't get those anymore.
No, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. But I do think that if some celebrity people figure that out, like, hey, let me be elusive and not just out there, they'd probably get more fans because of that.
Right. They could.
And what made me think of that was apparently they have you ever seen the documentary The Last Dance?
Yeah.
I've watched it twice.
It's fantastic.
It is. And they were talking about somebody who's running for a political position in Chicago, and he
Yeah.
was like the first black guy to run. And Michael Jordan didn't really come out and support him.
Right.
And apparently he said to his mom, because his mom was like, oh, you should support him. And he's like, Mom, you know, Republicans buy Nikes also.
Right.
And I'm not saying he was right for doing that. Like, oh,
Right.
but at the
Right.
same time, like, well, maybe he's the type of person who's like, well, what does my opinion matter?
Right.
I'm just another human being like you. Like, if I go out there and say, yeah, I like this guy, if you're the type of person who's just going to vote for a guy because I support him.
Right. That's
You know?
problematic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No, I didn't totally agree with that statement, but I totally understand being politically aloof.
Yeah.
Like as a person who has some reach to human beings, unless you're super political active and you really dig at issues and you really talk about them, just picking a guy,
yeah,
there's no point to that. There's no point to that.
I bet you
I mean, I
secretly,
understand it's about getting votes, but
yeah, I bet you secretly there's a lot of famous people and stuff who are like, man, just don't ask me that shit.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
but if they don't, then some of the fans now, I ultimately think that they would have more fans if they didn't. Because I think, again, the majority of the people want someone who's like, look, I'm just an entertainer. You don't have to listen to me. Do what you think is right.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I think we're at that point in the world where that could work, where almost every time before that it would.
Now, do you remember that MTV campaign a long time ago, Rock the Vote?
Yes.
And that really wasn't, it was apolitical. Now, certainly you could make a decent argument that it's on MTV, it's aimed towards young kids, we all know, but they never came out and officially said anything. They just said, go vote.
Yeah.
Right. Now, was there a hidden agenda? Sure, we could have that argument, but it wasn't outwardly explicitly spoken. It was, guys, this is a democracy. We need to get out and vote.
Yeah.
It wasn't saying who to vote for. It wasn't saying who I endorse. It was just, and I really remember that campaign, looking back on it, saying that was really interesting how it was apolitical explicitly.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it might have had a hidden message, but at the same time, it didn't come out and say vote for Clinton.
South Park had a episode on that.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, it was and Puff Daddy was in it, and that was back when they did the Vote or Die.
Okay.
They did the Vote or Die campaign, and Stan, they needed to get a new mascot for the school, and the mascot was a turd sandwich or a giant douche, because it was the 2004 election. And Stan was like, well, I don't want a turd sandwich or a giant douche. So they kept trying to get him to vote. And Kyle, who was for the giant douche, was like, you have to vote. You have to vote. And then he started voting and writing down turd sandwich. And Kyle's like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm voting. He's like, no, dude, don't vote for that guy. He's like, so you just want me to vote for your guy?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And then Stan wouldn't vote. So Puff Daddy, who literally said vote or die, was like, well, now you have to die. And they chase him around and try and shoot him. They South Park, I haven't watched too much of them now, but I've always loved them because I don't know, I think they're awesome in the way that they talk about social issues.
Yeah, I've never seen an episode. I never saw a Simpsons episode, just animated stuff. I never really, and people keep saying you got to, and I just never ultimately get into it. But people keep saying South Park has such great ways to deal with political issues.
Yeah.
kind of
I
poke fun at the whole system.
Yeah, they do. They I think South Park is the most brilliant show that's ever been made.
Yeah.
And I say that being like, even some of the newer stuff, I think like it's not as funny as the old stuff, but they have a great way of simply explaining things, and I don't know, just simply explaining things, like, and they bust on everybody.
Yeah.
Like they
Right.
don't care. They don't give
Right.
a crap what one of their popular episodes was when they did the Scientology episode,
Mm-hmm.
and Isaac Hayes, who was a Scientologist, played Chef. He always did the voice for Chef for like the first 12 seasons. And they did a Scientology episode, and he said, if you do this episode, I'm quitting. And they said, okay. And they had to kill off his character, and they were just like, nobody's above being picked on.
Right.
I don't
Right.
care who you are. Like, everyone gets busted on.
Right.
Doesn't matter if we're friends with you. But yeah, they did a bunch of cool, funny stuff on Trump, where one of the teachers was running as he was Trump, and he was saying just the most outlandish stuff. And then at the end, he was like, it basically showed that he was like, man, I might actually win. I don't want to win. I'm just trying to get popular. And he
Trying to
told
sell my
everyone,
brand.
yeah. He and the whole thing was where Hillary Clinton was saying, my opponent is a liar. Don't listen to him. And they keep telling Hillary, like, this is what you got to say. Just whatever he says, say, my opponent's a liar. Do not listen to him. And he comes out and he's like, all right, guys, I got to be honest. This was just a goof. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. Vote for my opponent. She's not great, but she's better than I am. And she just goes, and it pans to her, and she's like, my opponent is a liar, and don't listen to anything he says.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that show is really good. One of my favorite and least favorite episodes, I shared this with my sister, because my sister always talks to me about raising women. And you know this, you have 3 daughters.
Yep.
And she's always like, you have to raise girls, the right way, and feel good about themselves, and so on and so forth. But we always talk about how scary social media is with Instagram, and girls feeling like they have to look a certain way and show certain things to get attention. And how it scares the crap out of me. But they had a episode where they were talking about Instagram. So one of the kids had a crush on Kim Kardashian, because he's like, oh, she's so beautiful. And the other girl's like, this girl, Wendy, who's like an activist, she's like, those pictures aren't real. Like, they're photoshopped. Like, that's not real. And he's like, I don't believe you. And then one of the other girls wanted to date him, and he's like, she's ugly. She said, what are you talking about? She's ugly. It's like, she doesn't look like Kim Kardashian. So the girl put an Instagram photo of her and photoshopped it, and the kids started dating her. And all the boys started dating these girls, and instead of introducing their girlfriend, they would just show their Instagram photo. And so the girl, Wendy, is all mad about it, and she's like, this is wrong. Like, girls shouldn't feel like they have to, be something they're not, and Photoshop their bodies. And everyone's saying that she's jealous of everybody, and so on and so forth. And she keeps fighting, and everyone's telling her she's, just being jealous and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the episode, it shows the girl, Wendy, the activist girl, in the library, and she's typing. And it goes to the computer screen, and it shows her cropping her photo.
Yep.
Here. And then she just starts crying, and the episode ends.
It's pretty powerful.
It is, because it's like, man, like, these girls feel like they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like, you tell a young girl, oh, this is not the kind of attention you want. You don't want guys contacting you because of your way your body looks.
Right.
But then all their friends who look like that get the attention.
Yep.
Like, how do you tell a 16-year-old girl that you're right and they're wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't buy the lie. Yeah. It's going to be tough at 16 to do that.
Mm-hmm. I don't envy the kids nowadays.
No.
I look back on when we grew up, and I mean, yours was, when did you graduate high school?
89.
All right, I graduated in 98. But at all those years, like, I don't know. I hate to say this, but people are going to look back on those times and be like, this is the greatest time to be alive.
I would not disagree with you.
Yeah.
The amount of phone watching that I do the second we have any moment of break, everybody.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is an existence I would never want to have.
Well, yeah, but not even that, but just it was, and yes, that stuff too, but also like, I don't know. It's just not everything was so crazy.
Yeah.
And I do think that it was one of the times where, like, you know, again, when you look back at political stuff that was happening in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, like, you had disagreements, but everyone was kind to each other.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like, oh, you're this and you're destroying our world. And like you said, I think it's time. 40% of the people saying, I think it's time for violence.
Yeah.
Bill Maher said this on one of his latest episodes, where he said that he was getting he had his Uber driver, who was from, I forget what country he said, but it was a country that in the early 80s or early 90s was, you know, somewhat peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned into, like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, and people fighting on the streets and like killing each other on the streets and everything. And his Uber driver said to him, this is exactly what I saw before that happened. He's like, the way that people are acting in America is exactly the way it was right before it all fell apart.
Yeah.
And that's what scared me. Like, I literally, past 2024, it sounds messed up, and I'm not even planning past that. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't see any other way around getting to there.
Yeah. No matter what. And 2022 might be a little bit of a more mellow because it's not a presidential election. 2024, nobody's going to believe the election results.
Yeah, at all.
Nobody. It won't matter what happens. It won't matter, how they say they counted the votes. I could watch every single vote and I'm still not going to believe. I'm going to say, oh, well, they made him move his hand and he had to vote for the other. They're going to make up all kinds of stuff to make it out to be.
Yeah, but that's the point. Like, that's the point when political leaders on both sides say, yeah, go ahead and do what needs to be done. You won't get arrested.
Right.
You're in our area, you won't get arrested. Like, once people have that green flag, I don't know. I said this to a lot of people, and I think I said it to you in one of the times we talked. The only small hope I have is that, unlike the Civil War in the 1800s, like, everyone has somebody who they know who's politically on the other side. And you don't get to pick and choose who gets violence against them.
Right, because it wouldn't be that kind of organized north-south. It's neighbor on neighbor.
Like, you literally would have to be like, if you were on the right or left, like, okay, we're taking matters into our own hands.
Yep.
Like, you don't get to pick and choose who the enemy is.
Right.
You don't get to say, oh, I went to high school with them, we're good friends, don't hurt them.
Yeah, not that guy. Yeah.
You don't get to pick family members who politically, like, think about how many conservatives and would have to say, oh man, my daughter, my son, and vice versa. People who are younger on the left having to say, like, oh, not my mom or dad.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
you don't get to say that. If
Right.
you're at that point where you're like, these people deserve violence, then it has to be against everybody.
Yep.
And that's why I don't want it to be that.
That's why I'm hoping, when you said you have a little bit of hope, so do I, because I'm hoping they're just words. Like, they haven't fully processed and conceptualized what those words actually mean.
Yeah.
But I will say that I've had people who, not my close friends, but periphery friends, say to me, if it comes down to it, I'm coming to you first because I know you don't have a gun and I'm taking all your crap and I'm going on my way. And I'm like, dude, we're like friendly. Like, I don't understand what's going on right now. Like, because my political views just don't agree. And they're like, dude, and you didn't say I'm going to take you out, but there was a real nice implication underneath the surface that was like, so if I'm standing in the door, what are you going to do to me? Like,
That's
dude,
fucked
I don't
up.
agree with anything you think, and I don't think your thoughts are valid, but I'm not thinking about killing you. Like,
Yeah,
what is going on?
that's messed up. That's actually worse.
But again, it's words. It's words.
It is word,
But-
but that's what my hope is, that what saves it, because whether, again, it's a friend, but most people have a family member
Right.
who's on the other side somewhere in their family. You know
Right.
what I mean? And even if you live up north, or even if you live down south, like, there's still somebody. And that's my only hope. What saves it is when people go, oh man, we gotta do this to people we know and
Yep.
care about.
Right.
Like, it's, but again, I hate even talking about that. But
Yeah.
I'm sure in Germany in 1930s, there was people who were like, hey, I know that person.
Right.
I went to school with them.
Right.
Now, like, it happened there.
Yep. Yep. They jumped over that hurdle.
And the messed up part too is that once America falls apart, the rest of the world falls apart.
Yep. Yep. Because the bad faith actors who are leaders in other countries are going to take total advantage of that situation,
Yeah.
and then it's going to be not good, not good at all.
Yeah, that's why I don't know. I keep looking like an eye out for people who, like, oh man, maybe this person will like get up and run. And I don't think people feel like they have a chance if they're not Democrat or Republican
Mhm.
or not hardcore.
Right. Right.
But then again, I said the same thing about Biden. Like, even though I didn't vote for him and I don't, necessarily like, it's not that I never liked him, because I don't even know what he's like as a person. Like,
Right.
Kind of like that. It's hard to even really tell. But I thought, like, okay, well, he's going to be more middle ground. But I mean, it doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican. Like, I said that to people who were like, oh man, Trump's getting, Trump wants this. And I'm like, yeah, Republicans have wanted that since 2000. Like, he didn't make anything up.
Right.
He didn't
Right.
create anything new. There's
Right.
nothing, like, I've heard people say that he is like, oh, he wanted to build the wall. Go back to 2004. They were talking about building a wall. Like, he didn't make, that wasn't his idea.
Right. Right. And we've had one. We've had, like, it just doesn't make sense to me how people
In
can't
2000,
comprehend that.
in 2004, Donald Trump was talking to Jesse Ventura about running with him as a Democrat.
Right. Right.
That's Jesse Ventura has a story where they were at dinner and they were talking to him. I think it was Jesse Ventura, and like talking to him about running on the Democratic Party. I said this to a lot of Trump lovers. I was like, you know who used to support Hillary Clinton? Donald Trump.
Right.
Like, did you forget that?
Conveniently, yes. Conveniently, yes, they did.
He's an opportunist.
Yes. Yep. And in my mind, a grifter and a thief, and he'll take the dollar out of your pocket, even if it's the last dollar you got. That's how
I believe that too.
it feels.
I think I
But
said this to you on the,
people are going to buy him a new plane. He's going to end up getting a new plane for free because people are giving him money.
yeah.
I'm just like, how? I just don't I just can't comprehend the concept.
I do. I always say this. I do think, and again, both sides. You know how I'm big on that. Like, but it's not so much they like him; it's that they hate the other side.
Right.
I had one of the most hardcore Trump supporters I know, that I personally know, like, you know, distantly, but they said to me, I mean, literally have, I mean, again, flags, everything.
Yep. Yep.
Say to me privately, yeah, I think the guy's an effing joke. But at least those people hate him and I'm getting what I want. And I get it. I get it. I get if someone on the left said, you know what? I don't agree with AOC, but man, I love making those Republicans eat their own words and go again. Like, I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. Because I found myself on, again, when that thing happened where someone attacks me because I don't agree with everything they say, a small part of me wants to be like, screw you. Like, but I know that's just me being emotional.
Right. And in the moment.
And in the moment, like, no, I'm not gonna, and that's why I tell people, like, I don't care how much, if someone on the left did this, like, you know, it's like what in the riots, when I didn't agree with the riots in 2020, not the protests, because the protests were fine, but the people doing the damage, like, that's not gonna make me vote for Trump. Like, I don't like, oh, these people doing something I don't agree with. That's not going to be like, well, I guess I only have this choice.
Right.
Like, but I do feel that people go there, and I don't necessarily blame them. I just wish that they could look back and be like, hey, do I have to love one side because I hate the other?
Right. But I think even the hating of the other, and again, this is just my anecdotal evidence of what I've seen. I will admit that I like to stay politically aware, is framing the other person as something they're not. So calling Biden a communist is the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life.
I agree.
And you say Biden has open borders. Biden wants to take your guns. It's like, can we just start with none of those things are true and then disagree?
Yeah. Well,
force me into the position of supporting him, which I don't on many things, because if I don't support him, it sounds like I'm agreeing with you, and you're not saying the truth.
Yeah.
We can't converse because we can't start on the same ground of, all right, let's admit Biden's not a communist. Let's just start there. Nope, can't do it. So then I'm like, then okay, then I'm going to say that Trump is a misogynist, racist Nazi.
Dictator. Yeah.
And then they'll be like, no, he's not. And I'm like, well, that's my opinion. Can't change my mind.
So and then they'll try and say how he isn't. It's like, well, you're not trying to listen to me when I say, like, again, all facts have gone out the window a long time ago, but it's the communist thing, which I'll admit I'm a little ignorant when it comes to even what the meanings are, but it seems to me that a lot of people are putting communists and socialists or democratic socialists all in the same arena when it's really a very different thing.
Yes. And it's used as a cudgel to get those people to say, I'll vote for this guy because I don't want that thing. But that thing isn't going to appear. Nobody's coming to take your guns. Nobody's coming to bring communism. Nobody's opening up the borders and letting everybody run wild.
Yeah.
How can we start a conversation when that's what you believe about somebody that clearly is not believing those things? Is very difficult for me.
Yeah.
How do I even have a conversation? We can't have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, like, I mean, I know we're doing this on tape, but what annoys me is that even in private, people can't say something, you know, because they feel like, oh, I can't go against my team. You know, our whole culture in America has been leading up to that forever. It's like, you know, a Red Sox fan and a Yankees fan. A Red Sox fan can never admit, oh, Derek Jeter's a good shortstop.
Yep.
Like, No, of course he's a good shortstop. He's one of the best ever. Like, doesn't mean I have to like the Yankees.
Mariano Rivera is the man. I love that guy.
Yeah.
And I'm diehard. Would like to see the Yankees never win a baseball game again. Red
Yeah.
Sox.
When I was watching sports and I was, in my teens and later on when I was big on the Red Sox, it used to always bother me when Red Sox fans would say Yankees suck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they don't though.
And
They're actually the most dominant franchise in all of sports.
right. Exactly.
So I just felt like an idiot if I said Yankees suck. I could say I want them to lose and I want the Red Sox to beat them.
I hate them.
Yeah, but they don't suck.
But unless your definition of suck is just a playful, little wistful thing of just saying something to hate them.
Yeah.
But the actual phrase itself is like, oh, that's not at all true.
Seth Meyers had this on SNL. Seth Meyers did this skit with Derek Jeter on Weekend Update. And he was a Red Sox fan. And he kept saying, like, you suck. And then finally Jeter's like, look, Seth, what can I do? What can I do to make you happy? He's like, can you come play for us? He's like, nope. And he's like, you suck.
Totally true.
Speaking, this is one of the last things I'll say because I got to get going just a little bit. But man, speaking of the whole everything's political, I like Seth Meyers. I like Jimmy Fallon. I like who's the other guy? Stephen Colbert. I can't watch late night shows anymore.
Yeah.
Only because it's all political. Like, I just want to watch something that doesn't talk about politics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like every episode, it's nonstop Trump or whatever. Like, it's just, and I hate that because I loved late shows.
Yeah.
I always used to watch them or watch the clips. And I loved watching Jimmy Fallon's monologue. Stephen Colbert, I think, is like, I think he's such a smart guy.
Yeah.
And Seth Meyers, he does this bit that he's always done since Weekend Update. It's just so good, but it's all about Trump for 6 years now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, one of my favorite lines, someone was talking about Johnny Carson and how Johnny Carson never got too political. And apparently Johnny Carson said, like, his idea was people watch us so they go to sleep in a good mood.
Right.
Like, that's what they want. They've dealt with stress all day. They just want to have a couple laughs and be in a good mood when they go to sleep. Now, that being said, Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, they should do whatever they want with their show.
Mm-hmm.
I personally won't watch it because I just don't want to get in a bad mood.
So I know you got to go, but I've been dying to ask you. So on this theme, you're now watching Kyle Kalinske.
Oh, yes. Okay. I will talk about Kyle. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
I've watched him for years.
Yeah. Okay.
He's, again, there's plenty of things I disagree with him on from like a policy. Well, I shouldn't say disagree, because when it comes to any policy, I mostly can look at positives and negatives from it. So there's things that, I mean, again, he's for free college. I'd have to get into a more detailed conversation of what exactly do you mean by that, and how are we going to pay for it, and which colleges are free, and so on and so forth. My biggest fear when it comes to free college is, are the colleges they make free going to become the new high schools? Where now for jobs, they're like, well, you just went to the free college. And I could be wrong, but it's not so much like even taxes to pay for it. It's more like, is it going to become a non-existent thing? And then taxes are just paying for people to get that. Yeah, like it's an extended high school. But anyway, but Kyle is, I think he's, in my from what I've seen and what I've watched, I think he's the most moral person out there. Because even when they were trying to when they banned Trump from Twitter and they were banned Alex Jones, he was on their side.
Yep.
He said, I hate them. I hope nobody watches them. But once we start banning people for saying things we don't like,
Where's it
it's a
stop?
slippery slope.
Yep. And now we're burning books again.
Yep. And he said that on a bunch of different things.
Yep.
I also like when he says, I mean, he was talking about the Hunter Biden issue recently.
Yep.
And he was saying, like, you know, if all the sex stuff, unless it's illegal sex stuff,
right?
Like, I don't give a shit.
Right.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
like,
why does it matter?
Yeah. Why does it matter? If it's something that he did that took money from another country and from a political standpoint did something, yeah, it should be out there.
Mm-hmm.
And but he also says the same thing about Trump. And I think he said that about the recent, the recent thing they were saying that the Republicans do the orgies and cocaine parties.
Yeah. Madison Cawthorn. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, I don't care if they do that. Good for them. I don't give a crap.
Right. Why does it matter?
Yeah. And I always said that too, like with Trump. Like, I don't care. Like when they were trying to say, like, oh, he slept with a porn star and he cheated on his wife. I don't give a shit. I care that he keeps lying openly about it because it shows that he's a liar.
Right.
But I wish
whether he paid $130,000 out of his campaign funds to pay her off, that's a deal.
Yep. That's a deal. Yep. But for him having sex with a porn star, I actually said this to my dad. I was like, this is what he should have said. Either I'm not commenting, or yeah, I'm Donald Trump. This is what I do. You don't know this by now?
Right. I told you in the van that I grab women by the genitals. What more do you need?
Yeah, like that's what I do. Like he wouldn't have lost one vote. Not one.
No. I mean, his point of I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose a vote is absolutely true.
That will be a quote that is studied 100 years from now.
Yep. In psychology classes, in political classes, in sociology classes.
Yep.
Because it's fascinatingly true.
Yes. And it really does show that, like, in a weird way, it was good back in the day when everyone was like, oh, we got to make sure that they're a good person and stuff like that. But it's also kind of good that we got out, like, it never really mattered.
Yeah.
Never really mattered.
It's all mudslinging. It's all for show.
But I mean, it's again too, like, obviously you probably don't want to admit this and embarrass your wife and stuff like that, but I don't think Melania Trump cares who he's having sex with. No. As long as she doesn't have to do it.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. As long as she doesn't have to put up with it.
Yeah. And again, I it sounds so wrong. Like, I personally want to get married because I like the person and stuff like that. But some people want to get married because, hey, I want to marry a person with money and they can take care of me. I don't think Melania is wrong for doing that.
Nope. Good
for her. Everyone should get married for what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But I can understand how it's embarrassing.
The other person understands it.
Yeah.
As long as it's an open dialogue.
Yeah. I just wish that, I would have at least respected Trump if he was like, I'm not commenting on that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like you said, if his campaign funds paid for it, that's a different thing. Now your campaign funds are paying for hush money. Right.
Yeah, that's problematic.
You wouldn't think for someone who supposedly has $5 billion that $130,000 would be a big deal.
Yeah. Agreed. Dude, but it's funny to me that and the problem I struggle with, and you may disagree with me, I see so much of the hypocrisy of mudslinging the other side, and I'm going to frame it as the Republicans mudslinging the Democrats, while the person that's mudslinging is currently doing the same thing, admitting it openly, and getting votes for it. I'm like, I cannot put that together in my head to make that make sense.
Yeah.
I can't.
Well, I actually have a thought on this. It really comes down to, am I going to piss off people who vote for me?
Mhm.
And that's why I think like, and again, I say this a lot, and I know you understand it, but I feel a lot of people put it together when you talk about the protest of 2020 and the riots of 2020,
Mhm.
where they're two separate things,
Mhm.
right? Like protests, yes, whether I agree with it or not, it should be a right to protest and go out there and hold signs and say, hey, we don't think this is right. Once you start burning property and doing stuff, well, then you're not a protester anymore. You're a rioter in my mind. But people will say like, oh, the Democrats who talk about January 6th and not 2020, like, why would you do that? By the way, I'm not saying who I saw this on, but I saw you had a great point today, which made me change my thinking a little bit about how one thing is a single act of violence and one thing is stopping a movement. I never thought about it that way before. And that was actually, when I saw you write that, I'm like, that's a good point. But
I don't have many, so I'm
yeah,
glad I had
no, that was a great one, because I was like, oh yeah, I never thought about it like that. But still, I don't think that a lot of Democrats called out the rioters enough. Like, hey, look, this is two separate things, because those rioters are going to vote for you in November. And I think that also there's a lot of Republicans who are like, man, January 6th was bad, but we have to kind of make it seem like we don't want to piss you off because you're going to vote for us here.
Right.
And that's kind of the sad thing, which is like, how do you get away from it? Like, you kind of have to kiss ass to the crazies. But I don't know. Again, I don't think it would happen in other times in our history, but I think at this time, you could get someone who talks shit about the extremists on both sides, and you would get crossover people, and overall, you'd get the majority. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just wishful thinking.
No, I mean, it might be, but wouldn't it be great to have somebody be able to say from either party, listen, there are crazies on my team, and I don't support the crazies at all. I certainly don't support the crazies on the other side.
Yeah.
So why don't we try to come together here and find ways to make actually the country better?
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I again, with news and social media, I just don't think that, like, I don't know. I just have a feeling like, and even the mainstream things, like you would have Fox doesn't want that, CNN doesn't want that. Like, so like, where do you go to get that? I mean, I know I say internet, but I do feel like, I feel like a lot of the non-crazies are so fed up with all of it that they just want to stay away from it.
Yeah.
Like they don't even want to go online anymore. They don't want to watch the news. So maybe we lost our chance.
That could possibly be. It's a good point. And I think that, we can't, getting kind of circling back, we haven't been able to get past the point of just taking everybody and throwing them into a category.
Yeah.
As an example, I played cards with my friends, and one of the guys goes, "You would never vote for a Republican." And I'm like, I actually have some things I agree with the Republicans on.
Yeah.
Which they don't agree with anymore, but I kind of agreed on globalization and the idea of, let's spread the wealth a little bit here. Granted, the downside is businesses are going to make a ton of money, and I get that in the start, but it's going to take time, but we'll improve everybody's life, which improves our lives.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm absolutely 100% for that. I said, and I'm sure there are other ones, but that's one that comes to the top of my head. And the guy's like, well, you just won't vote for a Republican. I'm like, probably not, but would you ever vote for a Democrat? And
Yeah.
no answer. No
Yeah,
answer.
exactly. They'll blame you for not doing it, but
Right. But they themselves, because they're the smart ones. So, have we missed the window is an interesting point, that.
well, and I honestly don't even
No.
care if someone said I wouldn't vote Republican or I won't vote Democrat. Like, I kind of get that a little bit, only because, well, there's a lot of like key things that are on the Democratic side that I think are good. So even if I had someone I liked
Right.
as a person, as a Republican, well, it's still these things,
Right. Right.
which I
But I
think
wonder, what do you think about, what do you think the percentage is, just anecdotally, out without any evidence, of the number of voters, not people that don't vote, but the number of voters who would reach a threshold of politically aware, like policy wise, not just, I hate Marjorie Taylor Greene or I hate, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but actually know the policies. And what do you think that percentage of people would be that are voting?
who know the policies.
Yeah, right. And just the basic Republican policies and the basic Democratic policies.
15%.
I'm 10 to 15. And that's what I think is frightening.
Well, I said this to Tiff once because she had a great point about it, but I was like, and again, she could be right, but she was saying like, oh, why don't people research their stuff?
Right.
And, coming from someone like her, like, yeah, she's a she researches stuff. That's what she does. So I get it. But I was like, well, and maybe I'm wrong, but I was like, a lot of people have kids they have to take care of, and they have their job, and then they have to go home and they have to get stuff ready for the next day. Like, most people only have a small amount of time they can research stuff, which is ultimately why we elect people to do that part for us.
Exactly.
Like, we don't have the time to like break down all this stuff. I feel people do the best they can.
If you do that, you're giving up your entertainment time or your kids' time, or you're carving out and you're losing something else.
Yeah.
Because most people during the day don't have time to keep up with these things and pay attention to them. And so,
which leads me back to the whole fairness doctrine thing when they stopped that. Like, that was the point on the mainstream news, is like, you had to give both arguments so all voters could hear the positive and negatives.
Right.
Because again, you go on Fox now, they're going to say, oh, this is good and there's nothing bad about it.
Right.
Which is an impossibility.
Right.
Same thing for CNN. Oh, you're going to hear this and we're not going to give you any of the negatives. So if you had that, then people could make that decision for themselves, but they've taken that away. And I don't even know how we get it back, because if you try to do that on everyday things, like especially now, because podcasts are more watched, like how you're going into the whole free speech thing.
Right.
But who knows? Maybe they could find a way. Maybe they could find a way like, hey, if you have a podcast, you have to abide by these rules and say, hey, you have to have this person on. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I
think of it like, because I thought a lot about this because it bothers me. Like a PBS without government funding that's strictly run by donations, anonymous donations.
Yeah.
So nobody knows who's who and nobody knows who's getting what, and cap it so that somebody can't take over by sending in $2 million. All of it's anonymous. All of it is money that comes from the people, and it generates a newscast that cares about the issues and cares about presenting things and saying, hey, you know what? This could be a good thing, but here are the things you'd have to give up and sacrifice. And it's okay to admit you still might like that thing and realize there's going to be sacrifices. Instead of, well, there's one sacrifice that you have, so screw the whole thing. I don't care about the other 80% that could help. And because you can't have government run media. You can't have that. Government can't run media. That's for sure.
Well, that's where it kind of comes back to the whole moral thing too. Like, I could be wrong, but I think sometimes people will vote for stuff because it's like, maybe they know deep down, like, oh man, this might help a lot of other people, but it's going to mess with me personally.
Yep.
Which again, that would
And I
be the
think it's perfectly okay to think that way.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
part of your thinking process should be, how's this going to affect me? I don't think it should be 90% of your thinking process, but certainly it should be, how's this going to affect me? And am I okay with that?
yeah,
Certainly should be part of it. Hopefully the other part of it is, how is this going to help other people? And am I willing to give up that sacrifice for that benefit?
yeah,
That's what I hope people do, but I don't think they do that anymore.
yeah. Well, it's like, you know, even though we have many disagreements on business and stuff like that, I've always been the kind of thing like, all right, if your workers if you're making enough to where your workers can get paid, their lives can change a lot, but you might not have your third yacht. Is it really like,
Right.
I don't know. And maybe I'm wrong for saying that, but that's where I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like how, like, I do think again, when America, like our morals in America are really like, and I love America for the most part, losing it less and less each year, I have to admit. But if people's morals were more like, hey, what's better for the group?
Right.
How much would things be different? You know,
Right.
like, hey, man, this might screw with me a little bit, but I'm already at the point where I'm still going to have a good life.
Right. 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 And that to me is where we hopefully can get to, instead of, and again, you know, we've said it a billion times, but social media doesn't allow for that kind of give and take. It creates the dynamic of, you're stupid, no, you're stupid, no, you're dumber, and it just escalates from there into nonsense. Every time I go on a thread and I try to have, like, let's have a legitimate debate here because I know you have some points, it devolves immediately into, you're a communist, you're a you know, radical rioter who wants to destroy the country. It's like,
Yeah.
nobody in America wants to destroy the country. Not one single person wants. It's not okay. Some psychotic people, sure.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
excluding the psychotic people, nobody is going out. AOC is not in Congress to destroy the country.
Yeah.
You may not agree with what she wants to do to better the country, and that's fair, but you can't paint her as out to destroy the country. That's
yeah. Well, I say that again for everyone, like everyone on either side, whether it's AOC or this one might get you. I hesitate to say this because I think she's an idiot also. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
She doesn't want to destroy the country.
I don't think she wants to destroy the country. I don't either.
I don't either.
Yeah, because most people like, yeah, why would I want to live in a place that sucks?
Right. Right. I don't think she wants to destroy the country at all. I honestly think, yes, she's trying to get votes. So yes, she's being kind of boisterous and outlandish. But I don't think she's, even in her outlandish stuff, the purpose isn't to destroy the country.
Yeah. The
It's
purpose
just
is to make the other side look bad.
The country should be. I struggle to imagine what that is because most of the time it gets lost in the loudness of nothing. But I don't think she's out to destroy the country.
Yeah.
I don't think she's good for the country, but I don't think she's out to destroy it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think she wants her second major thing is she thinks that this will help the country. Her first major thing is, I want to be popular.
Right. I think I like my paycheck, and I think I like to do this for a little while.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So yeah, I am going to stop it, but yes, it was great talking. Let me just, I'm going to take it off record reel here. Thank you very much for coming on again.